The lawyers in our office continue to investigate the spill, review data that's been provided to us by Exxon. We've been routinely visiting Mayflower, conducting interviews, and we've taken more than 1,000 photographs. Our team on the ground tells us the site is changing. Most of those changes appear to be for the good. This week, a joint command team is starting the reentry process for 15 of the 22 homes that have been evacuated. They're also making plans for a walkthrough of the Cove area to determine if conditions have improved enough to move outside of the emergency response phase and to begin the remediation phase. The remediation phase is going to take a significant amount of time. On May 7th, our office created a new special task force to address concerns that we've been hearing from consumers who live in the area. The Mayflower Consumer Response Team is now operating. This is in addition to our litigation and environmental efforts. We've assigned members of that team to reach out to residents in the Northwood subdivision as well as the Cove area. We've been conducting interviews, learning a great deal about a variety of things, which is why I'm here today. Members of the task force are readily available to answer consumer concerns, and while I'm here today, I wanted to publicize our task force website and phone number. That phone number is 855-388-6555, or consumers who are concerned can email us at oilspill@arkansasag.gov. One of the most significant events that's happened recently is that on May 6th, our office received a 38-page proposal from Exxon, which dealt with how Exxon would either purchase homes or provide other compensation as a result of the company's oil spill. The proposal offered a variety of options for property owners within the subdivision, but offered no compensation for others outside of the subdivision who lived in the Cove area of Lake Conway. In our view, the proposal was too restrictive. It unfairly addressed the impact of the spill did not address the impact of the spill on residents near the Cove, as well as tenants who rented property. It is our view that all of the impacted residents deserve fair and equitable compensation from Exxon. This document contains offers to some of those homeowners, but only those who reside in the Northwoods subdivision. In our view, these offers are exceedingly complicated. They're very difficult and very different from homeowners from one area of the subdivision to the next, and they're very exceedingly complex. We think that Exxon should offer to purchase all of the affected homes in the area, not only in the subdivision, but also in the Cove, for the appraised price prior to the spill, and also take into account for those residents who can no longer reside in the Cove, the increased costs that they may incur in moving to a different area. We don't believe the current plan accomplishes that. In addition to these property issues, we remain concerned about the public health implications of the spill. As we met with residents and groups that represent them, such as Remember Mayflower, we've heard time and again about their concerns for their health. Many continue to suffer from headaches and nausea. Air sampling continues to show the carcinogen benzene in the air. To respond to these concerns, the Healthcare Bureau of our office is fully engaged. We are working closely with the Department of Health to oversee air sampling that we've been conducting in residents' homes. And it is all designed because we do have a concern about the short and long-term effects of these carcinogens. We conducted indoor air sampling in 14 homes in the Northwood subdivision, and the results were generally consistent with findings from air sampling and monitoring completed by other entities. The Arkansas Department of Health has reviewed that data from the AG sampling and determined that in 13 of the 14 homes, breathing the indoor air is not expected to harm people's short-term health. However, the Department of Health stated there is an indeterminate public health hazard in one of the homes. The department recommended further testing at that residence after remediation work is completed in order to determine whether the home should be reoccupied. This home has not been occupied at all since the spill. The department is currently reviewing raw data from air sampling that we conducted at 10 additional homes, and at the completion of that review, that data will be placed on our website. This effort is part of our role again to protect consumers, and it's in addition to the environmental enforcement and litigation piece that we will be undertaking in the coming months.
Representative Link, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you, I think you mentioned 13, 14 homes. Is that the total number that this request would be to Exxon? And do we have any idea of the average price, or have we put together any monetary figures on that?
Exxon has provided a no questions asked purchase for 22 homes that were sort of within the path of the oil. You know, when the rupture took place, it traveled down North Starlight Drive. They've offered a direct purchase for those people. However, there are another 30 homes in the subdivision that were not in that direct path, but still are in the subdivision, have trucks coming through there every single day, are breathing the same air. Those people are not being offered that same package. And at the end, Representative, when the oil left the subdivision and went into the storm drain system and out into the cove, there are a number of residents who reside around this cove that used to be a wetland, and it's now filled with water. They are still suffering those same effects, but they're not eligible for this compensation plan. They've been told they can submit a claim through the claims process. We think that's unfair.
Representative Branscombe, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad, has it ever been determined exactly why the break in the line happened?
That is still being investigated as of today. We do know that the break was significant, 22 feet. The ruptured line was 22 feet in length, showing a significant failure in this line, but the cause is still under investigation.
And I know that there's been some volume from Congressman Griffin has asked that Exxon look at moving the pipeline. What do you think the chances of that ever happening? And has your office been in contact with Exxon or anything like that?
Our office was involved recently in a stakeholder meeting. I think you're referring to the Central Arkansas Watershed in Little Rock that was hosted by the mayor. We support Congressman Griffin's view. Had this breach occurred in the Central Arkansas Watershed, it would have been catastrophic. And this line runs through that watershed, and there are portions of this line that for years have needed repairs, needed maintenance. Those needs are still present today.
One follow-up. With my understanding, the pipeline's been there for about 50 years, and then the watershed was built over the pipeline. Was there any concern? I know when this kind of people were running they built through the watershed, and those that built it knew that the pipeline was done. Sure. Or they would do the same thing at the end of the day.
We would need to go back and reconstruct that history. I think you're correct. We have really been focused more on the going forward piece. It's there. It was built, but I haven't seen exactly those documents from 50 years ago.
Senator Williams, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pressure in the line. Are they low pressure or high pressure?
They're very high pressure lines. They run about 90,000. I think the standard length is 90,000 barrels a day.
I understand the volume, but the actual pressure in the line. In a home, natural gas is 4 or 5 pounds pressure on the line. I'm wondering what kind of pressure is in there to create a 20+ feet split in the line. If it's low volume, that's strange. High volume, I can understand. I've never had anyone tell me what kind of volume pressure is inside the lines.
I've got the table on the actual pressure volume of the office. All I can tell you is it is a more high pressure line. Whether that pressure related to the 22-inch gap, which is significant, is still under investigation.
Another question. What's the gap, the gates, the stop gate, if you would, to stop the flow like that?
Senator Williams hit one of my questions. The 15-mile gaps in that interval, that shut-off interval, is that common in populated areas?
It is, I believe it is not an uncommon gap, but one of the things that we've decided moving forward is that we want to see that gap shrunk, of course, because as you might imagine, a lot of oil can build up in that amount of space.
Absolutely. Do you know what the shut-off interval is, possibly in some other states? Is this unique to Arkansas? Have one that length?
It's consistent, I believe, but that's one of the areas we're going to be looking into when we make recommendations.
Again, the bridge with the 22-foot split, was there any evidence that there had been any kind of leakage prior to, or possibly anything prior to this, or is this kind of a spontaneous split?
It's still under investigation.
Okay. The other Representative Cranston hit my other question about the watershed being built up there. Is there any system or any safeguards of possible terracing or anything that was done adjacent to the pipeline to possibly help surface runoff into the watershed?
Right now, the watershed enjoys a geographic advantage, I believe, in that the location of the line is close to a dam area where if there was a breach, it could be limited in some respects, I believe. But one of the things that is going to have to be looked at, in addition to putting more shut-off valves on the line, is actually providing a means of access to the watershed, because one of the, if you would call it a break in the Mayflower spill, was that it was close to the highway system, meaning this area could be accessed more easily than others. The Maumelle watershed cannot be accessed very easily at all. Many places you would be looking at taking an ATV down to the actual lake and couldn't get in the kinds of heavy equipment, so you would be spending a lot of time creating a pathway to get there, which is a concern.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized for a question.
One more quick question. Is there any maintenance going on in the state of Arkansas on that line at the time?
At the time of the breach and breach, not to my knowledge.
The reason I ask that, I know from experience in water lines, if you shut a gate, you don't shut it gradually, you create a rise of pressure upstream. And it's still amazing to me that you get a 23-4-foot split, which I'm thinking has almost a low pressure, because we're talking about a very dense product that travels through it. If someone's doing maintenance and they shut a gate, the pressure's going to rise back upstream. And I know someone has looked at that and asked the question, but it just seems like something had to be going on somewhere in the state of Arkansas to create a 23 or 4-foot split. And I'm still thinking probably a low pressure line.
I have been assured by Exxon that until they and PHMSA, the Pipeline Regulatory Authority, determine the cause of this 22-foot split, this line will not reopen. I think that's a very important question for our purposes going forward. We've been focused on trying to quantify actually, how much oil came out of that 22-foot pipeline, because it's relevant to a lot of different legal issues that come up. And certainly why this happened is front burner for us.
Representative Hutchinson, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How deep was this pipe?
Can't hear.
How deep was the pipe? And was it steel pipe? And if so, what gauge was it? And the pipe y'all were talking about in the watershed, it's actually underneath a reservoir. Is that what you're saying?
A portion of it, but
that it's a matter of time, wouldn't you? If something happened there,
I think this pipeline rupture has been a warning to all of us that we need to pay great attention to this and make sure there are safeguards in place, particularly for a water system that serves 400,000 people.
okay, maybe you can tell me how deep in steel pipe and all that.
It was 4 to 6 feet underground. I believe it was a steel pipe with an asbestos coating. It's built in 40. I'm sorry.
You know how big it was?
I do not.
Okay, seeing no further questions, if you would, Mr. Phelps, why don't y'all move to the next issue to discuss?
Sure, thank you. On April 5th, Enterprise filed a request with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to stop providing transportation fuel services for military jet fuel and interstate commerce, commercial jet fuel and interstate commerce, except for service to Lima, Ohio, interstate transportation of ultra low sulfur diesel as well. Our office engaged in this issue quickly. We heard from various stakeholders about their concern. We filed with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission an objection supporting other objections that were filed opposing Enterprise's plan. We scored a brief victory, although it was a temporary one. Enterprise withdrew their request. However, they quickly refiled a second request on May 1st. On May 1st, Enterprise filed this request with FERC. It was similar to the first, but included more details. Those details are as follows. By early next year, Enterprise would reverse the flow of one of their two pipelines going to Arkansas to transport ethane used to make plastics in the auto industry. Ethane would flow from the Marcellus-Utica Shale region in the northeast to the Gulf Coast. As for Enterprise's second Arkansas line, the company wants to stop providing services they offer now to Arkansas. This is a particular problem for Arkansas, particularly central Arkansas. In Arkansas, we have one refiner, which is Delek, formerly Line Oil refinery in El Dorado. The capacity of which receives a capacity of about 30,000 barrels of ultra low sulfur diesel per day. Delek does not make any jet fuel. If this transaction were to be completed, the pipeline supply available will not be sufficient to meet the demand for diesel. Demand in North Little Rock is about 20 to 22,000 barrels per day. Demand in Jonesboro is about 5 to 10,000 barrels per day, depending on the needs of agriculture. Delek's local market is about 8,000 to 10,000 barrels per day. So by our estimation, somewhere between 3,000 and 12,000 barrels per day will have to be trucked in from destinations such as Memphis, Fort Smith. We anticipate that this could increase costs to about 7 to 10 cents per gallon, in addition to a Tennessee export tax for shipments from Memphis. Our concern is the cost increase would increase diesel and jet fuel prices, which would hurt consumers as well as other industrial interests. We have other concerns with going down to a sole supplier. One is that refineries are subject to outages, both planned and unplanned. In January of 2014, Delek is scheduled for maintenance that will stop pipeline supply for 45 days.
Brandon's going to be recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I appreciate the work that the Attorney General's office has done, and I know that you're on it. And when I was familiarizing myself more with this problem, I realized how huge an economic impact this could be in my district. I was just thinking locally, and then expanding over to the state. I mean, you're looking at the price increase theoretically, if they had went ahead and done what they wanted to do, shut it down July 1st, we'd have been looking at an increase of 7 to 10 cents a gallon in diesel costs overnight. Now, kind of more than 20, well, one, and I guess it's a private pipeline, and a private company can do ship what they see fit, economic advantage to them. On the other side, when you're talking about it's Arkansas's only viable way of getting diesel fuel and jet fuel, and we also have the Rural Air Force Base that was struggling to get plenty of fuel for the jets. This is a concern for them, and even make a national security concern. And what it's going to do to the cost of all of us. So I appreciate the work you're doing, and I hope we can reach a resolution where they can be shown the light. This is not a good deal for them. We've got plenty of plastics for all the industry. Arkansas. But now this doesn't only affect just Arkansas. There are other states that, Louisiana, Mississippi,
And
Missouri, that it affects them. Let us say if they go ahead and FERC doesn't do anything, say, well, they can do this. What is our Arkansas plan B? What do we do other than trucking it in, which I guess would be a limited trucking companies, at least for short term. What does the state do for you?
Well, there's gonna have to be a comprehensive response for our purposes. If our objection were not to be accepted by FERC, our next step would be an appeal to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. We would also, I think, encourage policymakers to come together and figure out a solution to this, because it is going to increase costs. It's going to be disruptive potentially to the economy. I should have mentioned, I wanted to mention earlier that in addition to our office filing an objection, the state chamber, in addition, also filed an objection. We're very much in lockstep with their views, so I think it'll be an issue we'll be talking about.
Representative Bell, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have two questions, one of which I briefly discussed with you prior to the meeting, but we need, at some point, as policymakers, to have some idea of how much production we're going to need to replace. Now, you mentioned the total number of barrels that are consumed, but clearly we have some interest in knowing what amount of domestic production is going to remain available to us here in the state. And it's my understanding that that's been claimed to be proprietary, and that we've not had that information available to us. And I think that's something that needs to have a little more scrutiny. And I think there is an economic interest in the state to know exactly what the difference, or at least within some range of what the difference in production that we're going to need to make up through outside transportation sources is. So I'd like to know publicly here what steps your office is taking to obtain that information. The second set of the question is more enlightening for me and possibly other members of the committee. It's my understanding that there are two parallel pipelines here, and that one is going to be taken completely out of production. Is that correct? And then the other is reversed, or exactly what's happening there?
One of the pipelines, there are two parallel pipelines, and one of the pipelines is going to be reversed, but the smaller pipeline, and that's the one that's going to be used to transport ethane from the Northeast to the Gulf Coast. The other one will be, the bigger one will be the one that will continue to transport fuels. Continue to go from southwest to northeast, from the Gulf refineries to points, including Arkansas.
But that will be transporting the gasoline, or?
It will gasoline and other products.
Okay,
So that's the pipeline that will transport diesel from the refinery in El Dorado up through points north of the state, although that won't be enough.
Okay. So this pipeline brings gasoline to Arkansas, and then it continues
continue, the gasoline pipe stream continues on from Arkansas on that line.
Yes, it goes all the way up into, Indiana, and then there it connects to pipes that go northeast and also that go up to Chicago.
So that the diesel fuel line terminates the line on Ohio, and the gasoline line diverges that other direction.
The lines run parallel. They're two pipes, but they're right next to each other.
Okay. I guess that helps with that. Back to my original question about the information. Someone could enlighten us there.
About the capacity?
Yes.
We haven't nailed down the capacity, exactly how big the gap will be. We know that it fluctuates some. We do know that the refinery, we know what the capacity of the refinery in El Dorado is. We know that it does not make jet fuel. But the exact numbers, we don't know. We're working on that, but right now what we try to do is there's very short turnaround deadlines. When they file this perk, we have 15 days to respond, and we've kind of focused on the immediate problem at hand, and we'll investigate that and try to nail those numbers down. It fluctuates, and that's kind of everything throughout the whole thing.
So certain that we need to make up all jet fuel production from some other source.
Yes, there's going to be no more jet fuel movement on that line to the base. We're going to have to truck it in to the best of our knowledge.
Okay, and you mentioned that you do know what the refinery capacity is for diesel fuel. Did I understand you correctly on that?
My understanding is it was 30,000 barrels a day, and I've been told that roughly 8,000 to 10,000 of that is sold locally in Netherlands.
Okay, so we're looking at about 20,000 capability that could potentially be available in the state.
That's my understanding.
Thank you so much.
I think Representative Bell, to your earlier point that we discussed before, I think that you're exactly right. One of the important reasons not only to file something at FERC, but to protest this, but at the very least to get a delay. So to your point, state policymakers would have an opportunity to convene either with enterprise and others to figure out how we are going to make this up, because it is a significant impact, which is why we went to FERC and said this should be decided so quickly. So to your point, I agree with you.
We've got the chairs of energy and ag economic development both sitting here, and I just like, as a member of energy, recommend that one or two committees look at bringing these folks in and at some point and having that discussion. I think would be beneficial.
Representative Bates, you're recognized for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. Have they given any reason why we want to shut these pipelines down?
In their filings, they made it part of what they told us. They would have to put about $50 million worth of capital expenditures in the pipeline to keep it going. We're not sure that that's the case, or that there might be some way to reduce that, or possibly that it would be more economical for them to transport other.
Is it more safety concerns by transporting it over the road versus through a pipeline? I'm just wondering if you could go into that a little bit and tell us the concerns that we would have by going to the trucking versus the pipeline.
Well, I think I was going to say you're transporting highly flammable fuel down congested roads. The Little Rock to Memphis corridor is congested anyway. Road construction. Anytime you do that, that's just not ideal.
And I think our contemporary analysis has showed that leaving aside the issue of how you transport it, the cost will go up, and regardless of how it gets here, it'll be a more expensive product.
Representative Charlotte Douglas, you're recognized.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if we have a collective effort with Missouri, Mississippi, Louisiana, those other states, does that make a difference if we have a collective effort to work on this, or is that not effective?
I think the more people who are brought to the table to deal with this issue, it only helps us. At this point, we're seeking to protect our interests based on our situations, which are unique to Arkansas. Other states may have similar unique interests, but absolutely the more voices to the table.
So at this time, we don't have a collective effort to make a joint lawsuit, or is that even something that would be beneficial?
Well, at this time, the first step which we've taken is to file this response to FERC. We're going to be looking at all other possibilities should that prove not to be productive because of the impacts I mentioned.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I see no further questions. Anything else from the AG's office?
No, just want to thank you again for having us represented. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank y'all for being here. Moving down the agenda, I understand that the presentation